The kitchen smelled like weak coffee and burnt toast. It was a Sunday, the kind where the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I was upstairs, folding laundry, listening to the drone of the news channel downstairs, when I heard my name. Not called, not shouted, mentioned. I paused, a sock half rolled in my hand as my mother's voice floated up the stairs, soft, but heavy with something I couldn't yet name. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll make your sister pay everything." The world didn't tilt, it didn't explode. Instead, it narrowed. One sentence had never felt so final. I stopped breathing for a moment, not because I was shocked. I'd heard things before, but because this one wasn't a passing comment. It wasn't a joke, it was said with certainty, like a promise I was never part of. I stayed still, my heart thudding against my ribs like it wanted to respond before I could. For a few seconds, I tried to tell myself I misheard, but then came my father's voice, quiet but affirming. "Yeah, she can handle it. She's doing well, isn't she?" My younger brother chuckled. That light, carefree sound he always made when things went his way. That laugh burned more than their words. I went back to folding my clothes, but something inside me had changed. The motions felt robotic, like muscle memory was all that was keeping me upright. The shock had settled into something colder, something solid. Betrayal didn't come with warning signs, it came with soft voices and careless assumptions. I wasn't angry yet. Anger came later. First came the disbelief, the aching weight of being useful, but never cared for. I thought back to every moment I had stepped in when no one else did, how I'd bailed them out without hesitation, thinking love and responsibility were the same thing. When my brother couldn't make rent during university, I paid the landlord directly. When Mom's car broke down, I sent money for repairs without her even asking. When Dad fell behind on credit card bills, I covered them, and he told me, "You're a good girl, always looking out for us." But now I realized looking out wasn't mutual. They saw me as a safety net, not a daughter, not a sister, just a backup plan. That night, we all sat down for dinner like nothing had happened. Roast chicken, some mashed potatoes, a half-hearted salad no one really touched. My parents talked about weather, work, groceries. My brother scrolled through his phone, laughing at memes and telling stories from a night out. No one looked at me. I ate slowly, my mind racing through every moment I had said yes, because saying no felt like abandonment. Every time I felt guilty for not doing more. Every time I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd one day realize I was tired too. But they didn't see me, they only saw what I could give, and for the first time, I didn't feel obligated. I felt hollow, and then, something sharper, not rage, not bitterness, just clarity. It was like a light flicked on in a room I'd been sitting in all my life. I excused myself early and went to bed, staring at the ceiling as the hours passed. The fan hummed above me, and outside the street lamp cast soft yellow light through the blinds. My room felt colder than usual, even though the windows were closed. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight, I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't throw their words back in their faces. That would only make me look ungrateful, emotional, difficult. They'd turn it around, like they always did. "We've done so much for you. You think we're bad parents?" No. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my anger. Instead, I would change the rules. From that night on, I would stop being their fallback plan. I would stop saying yes just to keep the peace. I would stop letting guilt bankrupt my spirit, because I realized something they never taught me. Being family doesn't mean being used. They thought they owned my loyalty, that it came with my birth certificate. But that day, in the quiet space between their whispers and my silence, I took it back. They promised my brother that they'd make me pay for everything. They had no idea I'd already paid enough. If betrayal has a sound, it isn't screaming. It's quiet, it's the sound of a dinner plate, clinking a little too hard against the table, the sigh before answering a text, the faint pause before someone says, "Yeah, sure, I'll help." And I'd lived in that sound for years, smothered in it. Really, until that night, I overheard my parents making promises with my future like it was pocket change. After that, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't storm into the room and demand answers. Instead, I started doing the math. Not just the financial kind, but the emotional kind, the invisible kind, the type that can't be tracked by bank statements, but weighs just as much. I opened a new bank account the next morning. It wasn't dramatic, just a simple online setup. Different bank, new routing number, fresh debit card. I didn't close my old one right away. That would cause questions, but I changed my direct deposit. I cut off automatic transfers to family emergency funds. I stopped being accessible. It felt like a tiny rebellion, a quiet line drawn in sand and no one noticed. That was the worst part, or maybe the best. They didn't see the moment I stopped being their crutch, because they never saw me standing in the first place. Not really. Then came the second ledger, my emotional one. I opened a Google sheet. At the top I wrote, what I've given, what it cost me. Every row hurt. Not because I hadn't already remembered it, but because seeing it typed out black and white, no excuses, made it undeniable. March 2018, helped brother with rent $650, skipped weekend off, worked overtime. May 2019, paid off mom's car insurance lapse $900, canceled summer trip. October 2020, dad's hospital bill paid $200, postponed therapy sessions for 3 months. December 2021, brother's laptop for school $1000, used emergency savings. January 2023, sent groceries during family lockdown $400, lived off noodles for 2 weeks, row after row. Date, action, financial cost, and most painful personal cost. And at the bottom of each entry, I left a final column titled, Did anyone say thank you? Mostly, no. Not because they were monsters, that would have been easier. It's just, I don't think they thought they needed to. I was the strong one, the responsible one, the successful one, and successful daughters don't break. They just keep giving until they don't. In the weeks that followed, I rehearsed what no would sound like. I practiced in the mirror, in the car, in the shower. No, I can't help with that right now. No, I've got other obligations. No, I've already done enough. But saying it aloud was harder than I thought. The guilt was like a vine that had wrapped around my ribs for years, tightening every time I chose myself. The first real test came faster than I expected. It was my brother. He called me late 11:43 p.m. That's when he always called when he wanted something, but didn't want to give me time to think. Hey sis, he started, all sweet and breezy, like nothing had changed. Listen, my lease renewal just came through, and they raised the rent by like $250. I'm kinda stuck. I'll pay you back, obviously. That word used to hook me like a fish. I'd always say yes with a tight smile and a prayer that maybe this time he meant it. But that night I sat at my desk with my emotional spreadsheet open and said, I can't help this time, Aaron. Silence. Then a laugh, come on, seriously. Just until I get my next check. I'm not asking for much. My stomach turned. My fingers clenched around the phone, but I kept my voice calm, steady. You're asking for money you won't feel, from someone who always does. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been covering for you since you were 20. You don't even remember how many times you've asked because you never had to. His voice grew tight. Okay, wow, is this about mom and dad? They said something dumb, sure, but you know they don't mean it like that. They meant it exactly like that, I said quietly. And so do I know. He hung up, and for the first time I didn't cry. I didn't feel empty. I felt free. After that came a strange peace, not the kind you get after a family reconciliation or a big apology. Just the stillness of being left alone, of realizing that if you stop being a resource, some people stop calling. I didn't hear from my parents for a few days. No texts, no voicemails. The silence was loud, but I let it sit. I didn't chase it. Instead, I poured myself into my life. I took a short trip alone, paid for it without guilt. I re-enrolled in therapy every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I even started an art class I've been putting off for years. Something about molding clay with my bare hands, reshaping it to something new, felt right, healing even. That class became the first space in years where no one asked me for anything, and I didn't offer. It was just me. Creating, breathing, of course. The silence didn't last. The second real test came with a family emergency. My father's health had taken a turn, something about his heart, and the tests weren't covered. My mom called me, voice shaking. We're short, sweetheart. You know how these bills are. Can you? She didn't finish the sentence. For once, she didn't have to. I already knew what came next, the assumption, the expectation, the torch they were ready to pass again. And I was ready to. I told her I was sorry to hear about Dad, and I truly was, but that I couldn't give them money. But it's his heart, she said, voice cracking. You've always come through before it, I know, I said gently. And that's the problem. I offered them a list of options: financial counselors, patient aid programs, even a nonprofit that helped cover cardiac care costs. She hung up before I could finish. That night, I sat with the guilt again. Not as thick as before, but still there. It doesn't vanish, you just get used to managing it, like a scar you stop trying to hide. But as I sat at the edge of my bed, I realized something. They had trained me to believe I was heartless if I didn't bleed for them. But I had a heart, and for the first time, it was beating just for me. The thing about silence is that it teaches you what you really hear when the noise stops. For weeks after I said no to Aaron, to my parents, to all the quiet demands, I expected a storm, screaming. Accusations, maybe even tears, but what came was worse, nothing. I became a ghost in my own family. Texts went unanswered, calls stopped, group messages carried on without me. My absence didn't create an uproar. It just left a gap no one seemed in a hurry to fill, and still. I didn't go back because I knew now what I was to them. Not a sister, not a daughter, just a solution, until they found themselves with a problem too big to solve on their own. It started with a voicemail. Hey honey, Mom's voice, trembling but trying to sound casual. It's your dad. He's been admitted. Chest pains again. They're doing more tests and we're waiting on results, but they said it might require surgery. They're saying it could cost over $20,000, even with insurance. We don't know what to do. Then, please call me. That last line. It was a weapon, because for a moment I felt it, the old instinct, the one they had trained into me for years. That itchy panic, the overwhelming guilt, the sense that it was my job to fix it, but something held me back. It wasn't that I didn't care. I loved my father. I hated that he was sick. I hated even more that the medical system could bankrupt a man for trying to survive. But I also hated that they didn't want me. They wanted my resources, and I wasn't giving them without cost. I took a week before responding. I used the time to gather everything I needed: documents, emails, insurance estimates, hospital options, patient aid programs, charitable funding grants, and my ledger. The one I had been updating quietly. Every dollar, every favor, every sacrifice. Not for revenge, for clarity. Because I had decided I wouldn't just say no. I would make them see me. We met at my parents' house. Sunday afternoon, quiet, overcast sky. I hadn't been there in nearly 4 months. The living room looked the same, familiar and distant all at once. The kind of place that smelled like childhood and disappointment. Dad sat hunched on the couch, thinner, pale. Mom stood near the doorway, nervously folding and unfolding her arms. Aaron leaned against the wall, arms crossed, unreadable. They all looked at me like I was the missing piece to a puzzle they couldn't finish. We just need a bit of help. Mom began, too rehearsed, too soft. Just until we figure something out. The hospital needs an initial payment before they'll schedule anything. Dad looked up. His voice was hoarse. I know you've helped before. We're not trying to take advantage. Yes, you are, I said gently. But not because you're bad people, because it's what I've allowed. The room stilled. I took the folder out of my bag and placed it on the coffee table. What's that? Aaron asked, eyes narrowing. My history with this family, I said. Every time I paid, every time I gave something up, every time you promised to pay me back and didn't, it's all here. I opened it. Page by page, row by row, and for the first time they listened. I showed them the numbers, not in anger. In truth. I've given you nearly $38,000 over the last 7 years, and not once, have I asked for it back because I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought love meant sacrifice, that helping Was how you earned being needed. They said nothing. Even Aaron, always quick with the defense, stayed quiet. But I've learned something, I continued. Love doesn't mean being used. It doesn't mean being the one who always bleeds so the rest of you stay comfortable. Mom blinked rapidly, her eyes glassy. Dad stared at the folder like it was a mirror he didn't want to look into. Aaron looked ashamed. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I've already grieved the relationship I thought we had, but if you're asking for help now, real help, then we're going to do this differently. I pulled out the second folder, the repayment plan. It's not about the money, I said. It's about accountability. Inside were outlines of a shared expense plan for Dad's care, a breakdown of what I could contribute, with limits and documentation, an agreement that anything I offered moving forward would be treated as a loan, not a gift. And finally, a family financial counseling referral, paid for, scheduled. My mom's voice cracked. You're treating us like strangers. No, I said. I'm treating myself like someone who matters. They didn't react well at first. Aaron stormed out. Mom cried. Dad looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words, but I stood. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable them. A week passed, then another, and then Aaron called, not to yell, not to ask, to apologize. I didn't realize, he said. I just thought you'd always be there, like some kind of guarantee. I know, I said, but I'm not. We talked for an hour. Not about money, about life, his new job, my pottery class. For the first time in years, it felt like we were siblings again, not a transaction. My parents took longer. They didn't agree to the plan immediately, but they didn't reject it either. Eventually, Mom called to say they'd met with the counselor. They'd looked into the aid programs. They were figuring it out. With me, not through me. That was enough, and me, I'm still healing, still learning to say no, without explanation, still deleting guilt one row at a time from my heart. I keep the ledger in a drawer now, not as a weapon, but as a reminder of what I survived, of what I rebuilt, of who I became when I stopped being everyone's solution, and finally started being my own person.